Raise your fists together. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop bullying. Save the children.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Good morning, and welcome to the Rainbow Push Saturday Morning Forum. I'm Sheila Garland Olaniran, and today we dive into a topic that couldn't be more timely or crucial: your vote and its impact on the election, Biden, Trump, or... So as we head into elections in November, we know that we're in extraordinarily unstable times. We're in a situation where the country seems as though it's in complete upheaval, from the international situation in Gaza and Palestine, to the increasing homelessness and unhoused folks, to places in the country, almost every county, people cannot afford basic rent. And we're seeing more and more homelessness. Our educational system is on the decline. And so we have a lot at stake with voting in November. But keep in mind that at the same time, we've seen over 400 pieces of legislation introduced with the idea of keeping us from the ballot box. What is that about? Why are we being kept from the ballot box? And why is it being fed to us as a racial issue? Because we know that, particularly in the state of Illinois, over 38% of the people in the state of Illinois are poor and low income and don't often vote. And so how do we go about connecting with and uniting with those folks who feel like they don't have a stake in the system? And so we're going to explore this and many other issues. We're going to talk about several key issues. We're going to talk about why is it important to vote? What about the presidential candidates and their policies? What about recent polling data, media influence, engaging voters, voter suppression, and access? Throughout the program, we'll provide insights and experiences as we aim to not only inform, but also inspire you to take action and make your voice heard. Your vote is your voice, and it has the power to bring about change. So let's delve into these discussions and understand the undeniable impact of our votes on society. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started.
People often ask, why should I vote? And to be honest, voting is a sacred right. And if it wasn't so important, then there would not have been a distinctive effort to minimize one's vote. So while the 2024 election may seem far away, it really is right around the corner. So I want to encourage you to start thinking to yourself, do I have my voter plan together? Do I know where my polling location is? Do I know who's going to be on the ballot this election? And don't just ask this question of yourselves, but I want to encourage you to talk to your family and friends about this as well. Because here's the thing, voting is the one way in which you can actively participate in bringing about the change that you want to see. But to be completely honest with you, voting alone is not enough. It is so important that those of us who can and are willing to do so, that we put forth the effort to assist those in our community who might have challenges at the polls. So if you are interested in assisting others, then I would like to encourage you to participate in election protection. There are so many components to the election protection program. We have a hotline of volunteers who answer questions for those who call in, but we also have an election protection program where we have poll monitors and we have poll watchers. And this is where you can actively participate in your community and be at the polls to assist voters and to monitor what's going on at all times. If this is something that you are interested in, please reach out to us at Common Cause Illinois, where we would love to talk to you more about the program that we have. As I mentioned, It seems like the primaries are far away, but they are just around the corner. So make sure that you're prepared and that you have everything together for you to be able to vote. And the very first step that you need to take to do that is make sure that you're registered. But please be an active participant in this upcoming election, and don't just stop at voting. Try to find some of the various ways that you can get involved, whether it's election protection or other programs that might be out there. And if you yourself are a voter who runs into issues at the polls, then please be sure that around election time and during early voting that you reach out to the hotline 866-OUR-VOTE, and someone will be there to assist you.
Well, welcome back. Welcome back to our Saturday morning forum at the Rainbow Push Coalition. So happy to be here. We're talking about our voting. We have the elections coming up in November. There's a lot of controversy about the candidates, what's happening. And we want to give a little history and talk about what's going on. But first, let me introduce you to our panelists today. To my right, I have Tio Hardiman. And Tio Hardiman is the host of the Mr. Ceasefire Hardiman Show on WVON. Welcome. And to my left, I have Professor Emeritus Bob Starks from Northeastern Illinois University. Thank you so much. Let's kick off with a general question. I just want to, why is voting such a healthy thing that we can do to preserve or to have what's considered a healthy democracy? Why does voting play such a critical role in our democracy? Let's start out with you, Professor.
It's a political expression of where you are, what you want, what you do not want, the kinds of treatment that you want out of the government, okay? So that's why it's important to vote, because your voice is put behind a candidate, a kind of government you want, etc.
Okay. Now, how about you?
Yeah, also, a lot of our ancestors and forefathers, they lost their lives for us to have the ability to vote. It's also important to vote because you have to vote people in office. They make policies and they change policies. So if you vote the wrong person in office, next thing you know, you wonder what's going on in your community is because of the people you vote for. So you have to vet people out and make sure the people are on the same page, the way you're thinking, because it happens time and time again.
Yeah, and I think I probably failed to mention, but I'm happy to be here to moderate. I come from the Illinois Poor People's Campaign. We relaunched the campaign. Okay. And voting for us is about what are your values? What are your values? Because this really is a way to unite us at the polls. It's a very powerful act of organizing. And we haven't used voting in that manner since Reconstruction in order to really get the kind of government that we needed. We saw the largest transfer of wealth during the period of Black Reconstruction in this country, where we had 4 million newly emancipated enslaved Black workers, but we also had 5 million poor white workers who were impacted by this whole shift in the country that took place at that time. And so voting became one of the key ways to determine who was going to participate in the democracy, because we know what the issues were about who was going to gain control. Was it going to be the conservative, right-wing slaveocracy that had just been squashed? Or was it going to be the radical Republicans who wanted to totally remake this country along a democratic line? So for me and for the campaign, this is why voting is so essential. And we have to get past this idea that it's an identity. It's about all of us, the more than 140 million people in this country who are poor and low income, that are going to be impacted by our ability to vote and to vote our values.
Well, Sheila, given the fact that poverty is such an ingrained part of this country, why is it no one talks about poverty? We always, the candidates for at whatever level, if it's the state level or the federal level, they always talk about the middle class, not about poor people. The word poor and poverty are not in the vocabulary of politicians. Why is that the case?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question, and I know that we grapple with this,
Well, just like reparations, for example, some people feel that African-American people who are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, some people feel we're looking for a handout. That's far from the truth. You got to look at the fact that our people really endured so many atrocities back during the transatlantic slave trade, and we're owed reparations in many different forms. You know, you cannot just apologize. So when we talk about the power of the vote, we need to vote for somebody that will actually back reparations all the way. I believe there's a $17 trillion price tag attached to reparations, but you cannot really pay us back for all the suffering that our people had to endure during that period here in America. And then after slavery was, after our forefathers were freed from slavery, then you had 87 years of Jim Crow laws, then you had to go into civil rights, then the Black Power movement, then the failed war on drugs, and then the industrial prison complex. So we have so many issues in the year of our Lord in 2024 now. Now we have all kinds of other issues, police brutality, which has been going on for a long time. So the people you vote for can change policies to make it right for our people and everybody else.
You know, I think back to your question, I think very good points, but I think back to your question, why do people not talk about poverty? Because I think poverty is extraordinarily destabilizing for the economy. When you have 140 million people that are only participating on the margins of the economy and that really represent the increasing rates of homelessness, people that can't afford to pay their rent, you know, the breakdown in education, now you're talking about upending an economic system in order to guarantee that 140 million people, and let me remind you that 63% of those 140 million people are white. So, and Reverend Barber just put out a book that talked about white poverty and why we don't talk about it in this country, because we're not going to win any of these things if we have a divided majority. And that's what we're talking about. So we've got to figure out how do we unite ourselves in order to really have an impact at the ballot box. So that's why we say vote your conscience, vote your values.
The other thing that we have to mention here is that the majority of the people on welfare are white, as opposed to African Americans. But the welfare rolls and the issue of welfare is always painted as a black issue. But the majority of the people are white that are on welfare.
And you know, it's really interesting that you say that, because the majority of the people in this country can't even access welfare anymore. You know, that was ended under a Democratic president. They ended welfare as we know it. And so the majority of people, if you need help, it's very limited. In many states, you can only get it for 6 months, but the national cutoff is 24 months.
Wow.
No matter what, for your lifetime. So this is not something that just impacted black people, it impacted white people, as you're saying, Professor. So you have to really think about the policies that are being created. Why are they being created? And then why are we kept from the polls?
Well, you got to look at Fred Hampton Sr., some of his work with the Poor People's Campaign. He did his best to organize poor white people, African-American people, Latino people, even back during his time and day. So he was bringing the facts to the table, because we all must unify around our common interests. And then I'm glad you bring up the fact that I learned when I ran for governor, you do have a lot of poor white people that live in Illinois. And a lot of times they're not talked about. I'm not here to take up for them, but they do exist. But at the same time, once we organize together, that makes us have a sense of power. And that's why the vote is so important. For example, look at the migrant issue. I'm not against the migrants, but I do support the law. I believe people should come over here and abide by the law, right? Adhere to the law. So the reality is that my forefathers came from the South here in the United States. They migrated to the North. We never received anything. All my forefathers had to work, and my foremothers, they had to work hard jobs and work in the steel mills, work in a lot of the factories back then in order to buy houses, which is a good thing. I'm not knocking that. But here it is, when we talk about reparations, once again, people do not want to hear it, like it's falling on deaf ears. But the reality is you have a lot of homeless people right now in a lot of different states across the United States. Our people should be taken care of first. And that's why you have to vote the right people in office, to make sure they take care of the people. Whether you're white, black, Hispanic, or Latino, let's take care of the people here in our country first.
I know that's a hot button issue, but I will say this. A lot of the conversation that I get into with people about the issue of the migrants, they never talk about why they're migrating to the United States. It's okay for the corporations to operate without boundaries. We never talk about the corporations and how they can move freely, and they don't observe any boundary. They can go to Mexico, they can go to every crevice, every corner of the earth, and they can act with impunity, disrupt people's lives. The reason why the people of Venezuela are coming here is because the United States is holding trillions of their dollars. They don't have what they need in order to take care of themselves. Their education system's breaking down. There's rampant poverty. People are homeless. So, you know, we have to really think about what is driving people, what drove us out of the South. You know, what drove us? People don't want to leave their homes, but we were driven out of the South. And you're right, we have the ability to take care of everybody. We just have to figure out what that looks like.
If we had spent half of the money that we've given to European countries and Israel, if we had spent half of that in South America and Africa, we would have a different situation.
Totally different.
You know, because we didn't invest in Latin America, and you're absolutely correct. That is why people are coming across the border into the United States, because those countries are suffering economically. And in Africa, we've allowed the Chinese to go into Africa and take over the economy when we have not given any money. And of course, Haiti is a prime example of a lack of investment on the part of this country in a nation that is primarily black.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of reasons why people need to vote. So, you know, if we start looking at the history, we really understand there's a lot at stake, and that our votes really matter and that we need to make them count. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say before we conclude this segment?
Well, let's put the question of Haiti, the question of Africa, on the table for the two candidates to answer to. That's my thing.
And put reparations on the table.
Exactly.
And I say let's put the issue of poverty on the table, because I think poverty will address all of those issues.
Okay.
We put the issue of poverty on the table, then I think we'll have something to talk about. So let's kind of get into how do we actually encourage? Is it this understanding our history that will encourage people to go out and vote? What is it that really gets folks to the polls? In your experience, I know you've run for office. I know you're steeped in political science. What is it that gets people to the polls? Let's talk about that.
First of all, a lot of people have become more lethargic. They don't want to really vote in some cases or another because they don't have confidence in a lot of people that we vote into office. So there needs to be a real strong public education campaign to kind of really reach out to the people that do not want to come out and vote and find out what it's going to take to make them feel a part of the system, so to speak. And I do agree with you about poverty. If we tackle poverty, that's the main reason we need to go out and vote, because whoever you vote in office, they should make poverty a priority. So that's going to be important for the people that are living in poverty, right? So it's going to come down to really waking the people up on a higher level. It might work, and it may not work because the numbers tell a different story, right? And then you have more candidates running for president now, other than just the Republican and the Democrats. You have independent candidates running. I think it's the Green Party candidate.
Jill Stein.
Yeah, Jill Stein. So people are running for office just to get the message out. Yeah. So it's going to take all hands on deck type of effort.
Do you think that independent candidates would be the answer to drive people to the polls?
You know, the way the system is rigged right now, it's hard for independent candidates and third-party candidates to get any type of rhythm, seriously, because Republicans and Democrats have been dominating for decades, right? So it's not easy. I would hope that a progressive independent candidate would step up in the forefront and get a lot of knowledge by running for president, but it may be hard to do.
It may be hard. Well, on that note, we're going to take a small break. We'll be back in just a few moments. You're listening to the Rainbow Push Coalition Saturday morning show. And we'll be back. Thank you.
We're excited to get more people engaged and involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. Now, if you're interested in public policy and you want to help change the policies that impact those who are incarcerated, you can do so. If you're interested in impacting public policies that benefit education and businesses with social economic solutions, you can do that as well. You can become a policymaker by becoming a member of Rainbow Push right now. Now, if you believe in the scholarships that we've given to thousands of students each year, you can help us out. We've awarded more than $10 million in scholarships year to date. Now, you can help young people achieve a higher education by becoming a member of Rainbow Push right now for the annual fee of only $35. And if you're a student or a senior, it's only $15. You can help us make a difference in the lives of millions. Now, if you watch us every week, or if you listen to us on the radio, or if you're viewing on social media, we need you to become a member. And how do you become a member? It's simple. Visit us at rainbowpush.org and press join. Maybe you'd like to support the work of PUSH. If so, it's really simple. You can do so by texting the word PUSH, that's P-U-S-H, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give any amount that you feel comfortable giving, or you can call us at 773-256-2775 or go to rainbowpush.org and push donate. So whenever you want to support, you can do it from anywhere. So keep pushing, because we're going to keep pushing for you and keep hope alive.
Welcome back to the second segment of our Saturday morning Rainbow Push Coalition Forum. Welcome again. We're so happy that you've joined us and that you're watching. Let's continue on this topic of voting and its importance and its history. Let's talk a little bit, let's get more current. Let's talk about what are some of the key differences that you all see between Biden and Trump's. What are some of the key differences in their policies that you want to point out to the folks that are watching today? Go ahead.
Well, you know, I know Trump wanted to build a wall, you know, to stop a lot of the illegal people from crossing over the United States border. And Biden never mentioned or even talked about building a wall that I can remember anyway. So Trump was strong about that process there. However, I think there was a number, and don't quote me on this, but I believe there was a number of a few million people that have crossed the border over the last year or two. That's a lot of people, and you don't know who's coming over here. See, it's not just so much about the people from Venezuela. It could be people from the Middle East, people from different Chinese people have been crossing the border. So it's a whole lot of people crossing over. And you know, America at any time could be under attack. Look at what happened during 9/11. We have to be very security conscious now. So we need a president, and you know, like usually I don't give my total opinion on military stuff, but I will go on the record and say this. In order for the United States to stay a world leader, a superpower, we need to protect our borders, period. So you need a strong president that's willing to protect those borders. I'm not saying I'm for Trump or against Trump, but at the same time, I believe in this country. But the moral of the story is that's why we need to vote. And we need to look at policies, right? Because too much has happened under all the different presidents, right? Even going back to Barack Obama. And I'm not going to never sit there and just criticize, but I'll say this, then I'll turn it over. Trump is going around now, in my opinion, making a fool out of most of the people when it comes down to the fact that he's been convicted. He's playing with the people. He's making comments like, you know, I don't care about you, I just want your vote. He feels like he's untouchable. He may become the president, I don't know. But I want all African American people to understand this, and all people from everywhere. Just because he's been convicted doesn't mean that you have to vote for him, because African American people have been wrongfully convicted for decades here in this country. Because there's a perception out there that people can really identify. Matter of fact, he was 7% in the African American community during his first term. Now he's like 21%. He's gone up a few percentages there to 21% with African American voters. So we got to look at it for what it's worth. So that's my, you know, that's all I had to say there.
Okay. Well, you said a lot. Okay. Okay, come on with it, Professor. He said a lot.
Well, first of all, let us make sure we understand that polling, it's not the end and all and be all.
Yes.
Polling is probably off quite a bit, because remember, most of the polling is done by phone and social media. Many of the people who vote do not get on social media, i.e. women over 50, African Americans. Many of them do not get on social media and telephone to answer polling questions. Young people are busy talking to each other and listening to TikTok and all the other stuff, so they don't answer polling. So polls are, you know, take it with a grain of salt on the polling.
That's a good point.
Because the poll, if we look back in time, we see that polling was off quite a bit in many cases, okay? The second thing is, I think we need a presidential candidate and a president who will look at three very important issues to the black community. Number one, the passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Mm-hmm. Number two, the George Floyd Justice and Police Act, okay? And lastly, as T.O. said, the Reparations Committee needs to be put in place in the Congress, and we need to start talking about reparations in this country. Now, neither one of the candidates have expressed any interest in these three things. However, I think it would have a better chance of having either one of them pass if Biden was elected. It is clear that Trump is not interested in any one of these, period.
Well, you know, Sean Fain, who's the recent president of the United Auto Workers, and they just conducted a successful strike. They called it the stand-up strike. Well, he was just on being interviewed, and he was laying out the economic policies of Trump that would hurt workers, and so that workers would not benefit at all from having Trump as a president. Now, on the other hand, the UAW was also very long in withholding their endorsement of Biden as well. But Biden did go out and walk their picket line because he recognized there were, 400,000 organized auto workers that they could organize to come out and vote. So those are the kind of things that I think, you know, when we start talking about the policies, like how do those policies impact folks that will most likely go out and vote? And what is it that the presidential candidates are doing in order to, you know, get those votes? Trump actually did not, and he was in favor of shutting it down. Right. You know, he was not in support of the auto workers. My father was an auto worker, you know, so I have kind of an allegiance to that in Flint, Michigan. And so I think those are some of the things that we need to look at. What are the policies that are going to impact everyday working people, right? How are their policies going to impact public education? How are their policies going to impact housing? How are their policies going to really rein in the corporations and how they set pricing in our stores? I mean, it's like you need to take out a small loan to go grocery shopping anymore. I mean, it's a huge economic endeavor to just go grocery shop. And so I think those are, for me, those are the kind of things that I'm looking at, because Biden had the ability to tell these corporations to rein in on their pricing because they blame it on inflation. Exactly. But really, it's the corporations are allowed to set whatever pricing they want to set.
It's so important that we have a president that is willing to talk about reparations, not only the money, but the policies like education, like welfare, like inflation, etc., as they affect poor African Americans. Because, as you said, the culture is against us, and we have to struggle every day in order to make life easy.
One final question before we head into another break. I mean, so how do you think the media coverage influences our public perceptions about the candidates?
Horrible. Okay. Fox News is the culprit in this case.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. They propagandize the Trump line every day, 24 hours a day. And that's really bad news. And the media is not doing what we think should be the right thing for a presidential candidate. I mean, they should point out the errors in the candidates, but they take sides.
This is true.
And that's bad.
And what say you before we head into our break?
Trump is dominating the media. He doesn't have to spend any money for campaign commercials and stuff because he's on the news each and every day. Whether he's right or wrong, he's on the news, okay? So that's how the media is covering Trump all across the universe.
So, well, on that note, thank you for joining us on the Rainbow Push Coalition Saturday Morning Forum. We'll be right back.
Push Excel strives to be a world leader in promoting educational excellence and equity so that every child is guaranteed an opportunity to receive a quality education. We've awarded more than $10 million in scholarships year to date. And you can help young people achieve a higher education by donating to Push Excel right now. Wherever you are, you can support our students as we keep pushing for you.
Welcome back. You're watching the Saturday Morning Rainbow Push Forum. With me, I have Tio Hardiman from the Tio Hardiman Ceasefire Hardiman Show on WVON. And to my left, I have the Professor Emeritus, Bob Starks. Welcome back, everybody. We left off on our last segment. We were talking about the presidential candidates, their policies, their policy impacts, talked a little bit about polling. We kind of got into a little bit on this segment, which is media influence and voter engagement. Let's continue that discussion. What are some of the effective ways that we can engage young voters and minority voters through social media? Have you seen that kind of work being done?
I think it really boils down to three things that I've been preaching and screaming about, and that is history, which means that we should take our hats off to Miss Lee, I think is her name, who is considered the godmother of Juneteenth, which led to it becoming a national holiday. She marched around the country from Texas all the way to Washington, D.C. She stopped by the Black United Front office, and I talked to her. She's quite a lady. We need to have that kind of history. We need to have the history of Juneteenth, the history of people like Willie Mays. God bless his soul. He passed away this last weekend. And we need to talk about the struggle of slaves and the enslavement. As T.O. said, this is very important. Many of our people don't understand, young people don't understand the history, and that's why they act a way they do. Secondly, I think civics is so important in public schools. We do not teach physics in public schools anymore. And lastly, geography, a sense of place and relationship of one place to the other. Those are my three things.
No, for real. Yeah, how do you drive young people toward social media platforms that do provide education and history and some of the things that that professor was talking about?
You have to meet the energy, you have to meet the negative energy with positive energy and positive stories out there all over the universe, because like I said, in some cases you have some rappers, for example, that may reach 1 billion streams on their rap platform. And you need the same type of reach on positive messaging as well. So you have to meet that negative energy with positive energy. And the rappers making money, like I said, I don't want to criticize the brothers for making money. This is about we are living in a capitalistic society. People need to make money, but at the same time, why not help people? But once you make it with the negative content, then flip the script, right? And start pushing positive content to the brothers and sisters out there. That's just like a dope dealer dealing dope in the neighborhood, but he's helping to feed the community on Thanksgiving, right? You're buying turkeys, but you poison the community every other day of the week, and on the day you're giving out turkeys, you steady poisoning the community. So we got to change that narrative. That's all I'm saying. You know, we all make up, the community is made up of so many different key components and many different players in our community, but we have more players than just negative people out there. That's the point I'm making. So young people have to get that message, and then once they start pushing that message, we'll take care of the business, we'll take it to another level.
Well, listen, how can voters discern between biased and unbiased news sources? And I guess that would include social media as well.
Absolutely. It's a very difficult thing because, again, they don't understand the history. If they understood the history, they could discern these kinds of things. But if they don't understand the history, it becomes up and down. I mean, why should I care about slavery? We're free now, so why the hell should we talk about slavery, you know? Come on. That is the basis of this country. Slaves built this country. And if young people don't understand that, they don't understand anything.
Interesting. What say you?
Well, it's all about education. I teach a class right now titled The History of Africa Before the Colonizers, right? And see, I believe we're talking about this right now because we're talking about the president's race that's coming up, but it's coming up because we never brought any closure to it. All the trauma that was really experienced by African people here in this particular country. So when it comes down to presidential elections, we need to take in consideration the candidate that's going to best carry the water for our people, in other words, or carry the torch for our people. That's what I'm talking about. Because the first social media was Dr. King. I'm talking about I'm not saying in a bad way, but when he was marching, he took a nonviolent approach. Some people say Dr. King was a weak guy. He wasn't weak because he knew he would be killed. It took a lot for him to keep marching on. He had been threatened, and then eventually he was assassinated, right? Huey P. Newton, put him out there on social media. That's a brother that stood up for our people. Bobby Seals, Kwame Ture, put them brothers out there on the forefront. Angela Davis, I'm talking about in a positive light so we can go back in time and make sure the younger people identify with them. Fred Hampton, they filmed a movie on Fred Hampton, but put him out there in a way, he was educated, 21 years old. And he was able to lead the Black Panther Party here in Chicago. He took care of the business for the people at 21 years old. We need to kind of like bring those type of images back out there and just spread them out everywhere. Even some Caucasian brothers and sisters that are on a positive pathway. Latino brothers and sisters on a positive pathway. But make no mistakes, I'm concerned about reparations for my people because I trace my roots to a slave plantation. Traced it directly. My roots come out of Nigeria. You know, I'm a little mixed too, I want to say that, but my roots come directly off of slave plants. I know where my people worked, I know how long they worked, and how many years they had to endure that slave experience, man. I don't want to see nobody go through that.
Well, you know, I think that, you guys raised some really good points. I think one of the things about being able to discern biased and unbiased news is that I think it's because of the conglomerations of news media. We only have a few outlets. It's so corporatized. You don't hear very many competing ideas coming out of mainstream media. And so that's why I think social media plays such an important role. It's hard to get unbiased information. I think the other thing that's really important is that if you look at the curriculum that came to U.S. public schools, that curriculum was created by Daughters of the American Revolution. It came out of the South. They rewrote history, and that was the history that was put upon us as we were growing up. I don't know what kind of history classes you took when you were in high school and primary school, but it was very much from the curriculum that was designed by the Daughters of the American Revolution. And now we have curriculum that's being challenged where we had to fight and march and protest in order to get any kind of diverse education or curriculum, and now there's a backlash on that.
Well, the black community should be marched out by now. You know, we've been marching forever. And let me say this to you. With all due respect, Adolf Hitler, let's study him for a second. Adolf Hitler put a strong propaganda campaign out there against the Jewish people in Germany back then. And they sent out a lot of flyers and literature out there saying the Jews were not fit to be, you know, there, whatever the case may be. And you know what he did, it's in the history books, right? So propaganda can make or break you in a lot of cases or another, right? And that's what's happening right now, even with the presidential election. We have to make sure that we vet out all the candidates. Start looking at maybe, like say, some of the other candidates, their policies anyway. Because when we talk about helping poor people, that's what it's all about. Why help everybody? You're looking at the Ukraine, right? Looking at the situation in Haiti. We need a president with enough backbone that can straighten things out in Haiti. Go over there and get the right mediator to go over there with all this bloodshed taking place. Haiti's not too far away from the United States, right? And then the Ukraine situation, here it is, we're supplying them with a lot of resources over in the Ukraine, but we might as well just say we with the Ukraine, you know, we with Ukraine all the way, because that's where the problem is coming in at. I'm not gonna go too deep into NATO and all that right now, but the reality is that we have a lot of work to do, and we have to make sure that Canada is gonna back the people of America all the way with their foreign policies and domestic policies that are gonna benefit the people, and not just reparations all across the board, helping poor people, helping a universal income, backing a universal income, insurance, medical insurance across the nation. You know, like countries like Switzerland, they have health insurance for all their citizens over there. So, you know, why not visit those type of policies and make sure people are insured over here?
Okay, well, we've been having some discussion about media influence and voter engagement and what is biased and what is unbiased and what role social media can play. But I think the important thing that we've concluded is that we have to have a better understanding of our history. And if we don't have an understanding of our history, it's really hard to be educated as we go to the polls and understand what's at stake. And so we want to take a little break. We'll be right back on the Rainbow Push Coalition Saturday Morning Forum in just a few minutes.
Get involved with the movement.
Somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Join the movement.
If you're not a member, become a member.
I am somebody.
Fighting the most important battles for freedom and justice for all.
You made us change. Oh, trying to bring closer.
Join Rainbow Push.
But you're not pushing me away.
Join the movement. Join Rainbow Push.
Welcome back to the Rainbow Push Coalition Saturday Morning Forum. have been enjoying our very lively conversation on voting, the importance of voting, what's at stake in this election. There's so much that's going on. It's kind of hard to put a finger on it because it seems to be there's so many moving parts. But we do want to let's talk about voter suppression. Is this the reason that people don't come to the vote to the polls? Because voter suppression is effective. I mean, look at what happened, just in January. What happened with the attempt to try to overturn the recent elections. There are a lot of things going on there. We've got this uncommitted vote movement where people they're not taking a stand. Like, I'm not going to vote for this one or that one because neither one of you are really addressing what needs to get addressed. We've got an out-of-control war, a genocide going on in Gaza against the Palestinian people. We have a significant Arab American population in this country, Palestinian American population, and they are deeply, deeply disturbed by the position that this administration is taking on the genocide happening in Gaza. And so with all of this in mind, this uncommitted, what do we do? What kind of things do we need to do to not only address the issue of voter suppression, but how do we guarantee that we can continue to exercise our right, our freedom to vote? And then how do we turn that into not just our values, but how do we turn that into a pathway to get at some of the things we've been talking about today? So what do you see? What do you see happening in the future of voting? What do you see that makes voting fair and accessible for all? Talk about that.
It's all about educating all the voters, from the younger people all the way to the older people. It's like there's a lot of misinformation out there in the universe. For example, if you're locked up in the county jail system across the United States, you can vote. You can vote if you're in the county jail. People do not know this. While you're locked up in a penitentiary, you cannot vote. But once you're released from the penitentiary, you can vote. Sometimes a lot of information, you can look this information up. People are confused. Now, some states may vary. Don't get me wrong. Some states may vary from what I'm talking about, but the reality is that people do not know. It's a simple measure. You've been locked up, you're detained, you haven't been found guilty as of yet, but you can vote while you're in the county jail. Now, what happened in Georgia during the last election, as you know, if you got out of line, you couldn't, if you had to go get some water or whatever, you couldn't get your place back in line, you could not vote or whatever because you stepped out the line. There's a bunch of suppression tactics that were being utilized, but it's all about educating people. So, see, one thing about it, the election is coming up in November. We have a few months, at least 4 or 5 months, or whatever the case may be, to really, really pour a lot of good information out there so voters can wake up from every level here throughout the United States. We have a lot of key issues, hot button issues, Palestine, the Israeli conflict, right? Now, is it a problem of the United States? Not really, but in a way some people may think it might be a problem for the United States. You gotta understand Israeli's position as well. Just like me being African American, my thing is never again, the same way the Israelis feel, never again will they be attacked because of what happened to them over there in Nazi Germany. But to take it out on the Palestinians on a high level the way they're doing, that's wrong too. But the Palestinians have to take some responsibility at the same time. So what I'm saying is that you need a president that can take the bull by the horn, can bring both of them countries together and say enough is enough. I'm going to cut off resources until we work things out. We're going to cut off resources on both ends or whatever the case may be. Let's work it out, bring everybody to the table once and for all. It's going to be hard because the Palestinian people, they feel the land is theirs. And they're being crunched in this the Gaza Strip area. I mean, millions and millions of people just packed like sardines right over there. But you got to go back. We don't have time to get into it now, but you would have to go all the way back to World War II when the Israelis were placed over in Palestine, and everybody was open to it then, So that's a whole nother. See, what it is, another thing, and I'm glad I'm on the show, to be honest with you, because a lot of people feel like African-American men, and some women as well, are not educated enough to talk about world issues. Now, you had me on the show today. I'm well learned. I don't know everything, of course, but I've studied a lot of world issues throughout my career. So it's important for people like myself and with the professor. I learned a lot from Professor Starks over at Northeastern University Center for Inner City Studies under Isaac Carruthers, right? So the reality is that I know my history and I know world history. So people, when you vote for people out here, it's important for them to know world history as well, because a lot of times we end up repeating history if we don't get our facts right. That's what I'm talking about right now. So I think this is a wake-up call, actually, for me being on the show talking about presidential politics. But I want to kind of delve off into like Jill Stein, like far as what I believe she stands for, like peace on earth, like most people should. Like green things, making the earth a healthy place for everybody to live. It's all about protecting the planet. All these issues are part of what presidents have to oversee at different times. And one really crushing blow for any president. The president has his hand on the pulse as far as the nuclear weapons. So you want to make sure you don't have a tyrant in there. You want to make sure you don't have nobody that's going to push that button, because that button can be pushed at any time. We got China, I believe it's China, they have some drills taking place somewhere over there off Cuba, in the South Sea, China. So China is a world threat. It's a big time world threat. I don't think Russia is a threat like China is a threat, but we have to keep everybody at bay. And a lot of times people do not realize how much it takes to keep our country protected. I'll say that much. So we got to make sure we know who we're voting for in that regard.
Well, I want to say, and I'm going to let the professor say something, but I also think it's important to know how much of a threat the policies of this country are to the rest of the world.
Right.
I recommend, if people have an opportunity, read this book called The Jakarta Method. Mm-hmm. It talks about the role of the United States government in overturning and overthrowing democratically elected governments around the world. So it's not just about protecting the borders, but the reason this becomes such a critical issue is because our prosperity is on the backs of the rest of these countries that we have suppressed. We've overturned their governments. If they want to do things like public education, health care for all, they want to have teaching their own language, they want to have housing for all. This is a reason to overturn their governments, because you're talking now about democracy and goods that the United States doesn't deliver at this point to 140 million plus people, with death being the fourth leading cause of death in this country is poverty. So, we have to really look at what is it that our country is doing that creates such an insecure world, and that we then are fed this idea of insecurity, that we're not secure because we have enemies abroad. We're the enemy that goes abroad that creates the instability in this world. And that's why these presidential elections are so important. I agree with you that we have to have people that are going to really look at what's happening not only domestically, but what's happening internationally to create the kind of lasting peace and security that allows us to raise our children in a measure of peace where they're not hungry, where they're educated, where we know our history. So, let's go back to this. What are some of the measures that can be taken? Because just the fact that we're talking about, voter suppression and voter falderall, and what's supposed to be a democracy, that's a deep insecurity that this country has created for millions of people across this country. What do you say about that?
Well, I think we have to start with the Supreme Court of the United States.
Oh, my goodness. Right? You did not go there. We only have 12 minutes for this session.
Well, they have created a kind of anti-democratic tone in this country. I mean, they overturned the Voting Rights Act. They overturned the Abortion Act. I mean, they went down the line, and they're about to give Mr. Trump total immunity for anything that he does.
They're about to overturn, Brown versus
Board of Education. I mean, so they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. We have to understand that we have to get a president that will appoint some people to the Supreme Court that really believe in democracy and believe in treating African Americans, Latinos, and other ethnic groups the way they should be treated.
So it's not really just about voter suppression. It's really about the totality of what this kind of system is doing and the kind of violence that it's creating on its own population. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, poverty is violence.
If you're pushing democracy within your own country, but you're not pushing democracy in other countries throughout the world, that's a problem in itself, right? So definitely, and then when people are living in poverty, like you were talking about, how can you really think about voting for anybody? You're trying to pay your light bill. you're trying to, pay your car note,
And the policies that are being created make it even more impossible for you to do those things.
But Biden just erased some college debt, some college loans and everything. He just erased all those debts. I received a lot of calls from people that got their debts erased. So you got to look, it's good and bad in everybody that's running. No one's going to be perfect. So we have to be where we have to be. But see, the only thing about it, you're the president of the United States. You have to be kind of close to perfect because you have your hand on the button to push for a nuclear war. And trust me, that's a very, very sensitive role to have.
But would you agree that the issue of voter suppression and voter rights is inextricably tied up with the way that democracy has been purveyed and portrayed in this country, but not realized for large swaths of our population? Would you agree that that's in large part what keeps people away from the polls? Because it's democracy unrealized.
It's called racism.
Well, racism is one thing, but then what about poor whites who don't go vote?
Right.
What about them?
Well, they go along with the program, unfortunately. I mean,
Not
you're
necessarily.
talking about the states in the South, all the way from Texas over to Florida. They have instituted voter suppression laws that suppress the vote for African Americans, right? And poor whites, unfortunately, go along with the program. Right. They consistently vote for the people who are about suppressing the vote.
That's what our research shows from the Poor People's Campaign. So there's not that disparity that you're describing. But people are held away from the polls because they feel like you were saying, there's not a candidate that they feel is going to address their needs, that will carry a torch.
Well,
so I think that's the ease.
So if you in the Poor People's Campaign can get the poor whites throughout this country involved in changing this government, Trump would be off the table.
Maybe.
And you would have a new Biden who is supporting helping poor people in this country, because none of them talk about poverty. And none of them talk about poor people, including Biden.
Biden
right.
Well, another hot topic, hot button issue would be gun control, right? That's we need more time to kind of delve into that topic. But the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. The majority of illegal gun owners are not out here shooting and killing people. We have to intercept that illegal gun trafficking system here, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that.
Well, this is such a fascinating conversation that we're having. I think there are points that both sides are making, all of us are making. We unfortunately are running out of time, but I want to give you an opportunity to make a closing statement, to wrap up your thoughts on this whole issue of voter suppression, questions about future elections, why your vote is so important. Just give me a few comments, just very brief.
Okay.
Keep it brief.
Well, voter suppression has been around for decades here throughout the United States. It's time to change the model and begin to embrace everybody, allow everybody to become a part of the system. That's what it's all about. Reach for our poor brothers and sisters, middle class, rich, the rich people. We should all just be one here. I mean, then you had Trump. I will say this much, is that the insurrection was caused because it was took place here in America because of Trump. He can try to deny it, but we should be trying to unify the country, not divide the country. No matter who you vote for president, make sure that president is talking about unifying the country, because the last thing we need is a civil war here in the United States. Seriously, we don't need it. So my thing is, let's work together, everybody, and do the right thing for the people, because we have future generations depending on us.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Hardiman. Go ahead, Professor.
Well, I want to piggyback on what T.O. said about violence and gun control. It is clear that many whites in this country, poor, middle class, and rich, look at gun control as anti-white, because they see the coming of a revolution in this country, and they want to make sure they have the guns to fight the black people, the Latinos, etc. Because remember, they believe in the whole issue of replacement. Remember the Charlotte March back in 2018, when they talked about Jews will not replace us? They are saying that Biden is bringing in people from Latin America to make sure that they replace whites in this country. So that's a question that we have to deal with, violence and gun control.
Well, thank you, Professor. We've got a lot for our viewers to think about from this panel discussion. I've enjoyed the exchange. You know, we've got voter suppression, but we also have to figure out how to make our votes count. What is the values that we're embodying as we go to the polls, and what is it that's going to help lift us all in this country, and not just our own individual, you know, sort of thing that we want to have. So thank you, Professor Emeritus Bob Starks. Thank you so much, Mr. T.O. Hardeman's Ceasefire Show on WBON. We'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in to our International Saturday morning broadcast. We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition.
Thank you for joining us on today's Rainbow Push Coalition Saturday Morning Forum. We've had an enlightening discussion on your vote and its impact on this election, Biden, Trump, or who? We've explored the critical role of voter turnout, the differences between Biden's and Trump's policies, the influence of media, and strategies for engaging young and minority voters. The recent polling data shows a tight race, highlighting the importance of every vote. Your participation in the upcoming election is crucial. Stay informed, get involved, and ensure your vote is heard. Thank you to our guests and viewers. See you next time on the Rainbow Push Coalition's Saturday Morning Forum.
So thank you for joining us on our Saturday Morning Forum. Be sure to visit our website at rainbowpush.org so that you can gain information relevant to our up and coming annual convention. You'll also want to visit all of our social media platforms so that you can gain additional information about all that we have going on in the organization. And equally important, we appreciate your ongoing support. Feel free to take that cell phone of yours and hold it to the QR code on the screen and give on the spot, or take that same cell phone and text the word PUSH to 41444, or you can simply go to our website at rainbowpush.org and click on the donate button.
We are sanctuary. We are a sanctuary.
When I think of Rainbow Push, I think of two words: social justice.
Education advocacy.
Political empowerment.
Freedom and equality.
Corporate partnership.
Stop the violence. Save the children.
Don't get in. Shut it down. If we don't get in, shut it down.
Political change.
Inclusion, evolution.
Progress, justice.
Jesse Jackson.
Keep hope. Keep hope alive. Alive. Keep hope. Keep hope alive. Alive.
We want to be bridges to end these cultural gaps.
We're going forward. By hope. Not backwards. By fear.